well, if you're watching this, welcome. This is a very impromptu cooking session that we're doing together. I'm trying to sort of do a feasibility study for live cooking with me sessions to see if there's interest and that sort of thing. Anyway, I'm preparing Indian vegetable korma this evening. And I thought I would just sort of go live with it while I'm doing it and chat about korma and preparing Indian curries in general and ingredients and cooking. And if you all like that and want to see more of this, let me know in the comments below if you're watching this as a recording, or let me know in the chat if anyone wants to join in. So yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how to angle it. Like I said, this is very much we're testing this process out situation. Maybe next time I'll plan a little better and we'll actually try to do nice microphones and that sort of thing. Anyway, what I'm doing right now is we have these peppers and I am removing the seeds and the ribs because I want the flavor enhancing properties of the peppers, but I don't want the heat from them necessarily. And the reason I'm removing the seeds and the ribs is because the heat from the pepper is not actually in the seeds. The seeds are contaminated, so to say, by the ribs with the chemical that causes the spicy reaction, but the seeds themselves don't actually contain any of that. So it's the ribs where all the spice is. So you want to remove the ribs of the inside of the pepper if you want to maintain the flavor of the pepper, its flavor enhancing properties, but you don't want the spice. So I like to use a spoon to do that. Actually, I literally scrape it out like I'm digging out a canoe. Yeah. The fresher your peppers are, the easier this process will be because then the peppers are, so to say, inflated and will be easier to scrape. Mine are slightly desiccated from being in the fridge for about 2 weeks, so they're a little bit trickier to properly scrape out, but there it is. And a note on handling spicy peppers: if you do not want to contaminate other foodstuffs or your eyes or your mucous membranes with the heat from the spice, then wash your hands with soap and water and lots of rubbing before you proceed on to the next process of your recipe. So I'm going to go ahead and scrape these off, this cutting board off, so that I don't pay the penalty on cross-contamination. And if you're going to use, so you can use your knife to scrape your cutting board, but always use the back side. Don't use the blade of your knife because then you're going to make your knife dull. Save the sharp edge for actually cutting things. Use the back as a bench scraper if you don't have an actual proper bench scraper. Okay, so next up in this process, I think I'm going to go ahead and angle the camera down now, guys. And hopefully you can see this. Sorry, still figuring out some things about the space and the placement of everything. For those just joining us, this is very impromptu. So I'm now going to chop these peppers pretty finely because I don't want them to be a feature of my korma. These are going to vanish into the korma through the cooking process. So I want nice, finely chopped. So these are going to go in early on in the cooking process. Now, for those who don't know, korma is actually a medieval dish from medieval India. It dates back to the reign of the Mughals and possibly even before that. It was this rich, creamy royal dish from the northern part of India originally, and it's very much palace food. And it consists, korma in its essence consists of basically an onion paste, a paste made of caramelized onions and spices, which can vary from recipe to recipe, and then some sort of nut like cashew nuts or almonds or coconut or some combination thereof. And then that's all pureed with water to make this really nice paste like this, right? And with spices and ghee, and so it's very much a big flavor base. And then that korma paste can then be used to basically make any kind of korma: lamb korma, chicken korma, prawn korma. In this case, we're making veggie korma. And this one specifically I made with cashews, and I caramelized the hell out of those onions. They were almost as sweet as marmalade, honestly, before I pureed them. And that's going to lend my korma a very nice natural sweetness, courtesy of the Maillard reaction, rather than me having to add additional sweeteners such as honey or coconut sugar or something at the end. Okay, here we have our finely minced peppers. Okay, I'm now going to go wash my hands since the peppers are done to prevent myself from touching my eyes. Okay, so we've got our pepper all ready to go. Okay, so let's talk briefly about the process for korma. So basically, I have my pan. This is sort of like a giant kadi. I mean, it's not really a kadi, but I'd love to have one, but they're super expensive. So basically, we're going to put ghee in this. We've got some whole spices here: cloves, cloves, cinnamon, and then tejpata. And this tejpata, this is an Indian bay leaf. So there's a difference between Indian bay leaves and standard bay leaves. Standard, that's absolutely a very judgmental word. And Mediterranean bay leaves. And I'm looking for my Mediterranean bay leaves. Let me go grab one. Okay. So here we have a Mediterranean bay leaf. Notice the pattern of the veins on the leaf. Okay. Here we have an Indian bay leaf, also called tejpata. This comes from the laurel tree, the Mediterranean laurel tree bush. It's a weed that grows in the Mediterranean. In Spain, they literally just grow everywhere, and people can just leave their apartments and go out and harvest fresh, weedy laurel leaves, bay leaves, sometimes they're called. And then you'll notice the veins here on this leaf are long, and there's nothing in the way of cross veinage. So Mediterranean bay leaf, Indian bay leaf. They both have a nice rich smell, but this one, the Indian bay leaf, has notes of cloves and cinnamon and allspice. So it's got a much richer, spicier complexion, composition than the profile of this Mediterranean bay leaf. So if you can't find tejpata or Indian bay leaves in your local grocery store, your local Asian grocery store, your local Indian grocery store, and you can't find them online either, and you need them now, then you can substitute Mediterranean bay leaves, but the flavor profile will be slightly different. That's all. It won't ruin the dish, but it just won't make quite the same thing. And I prefer, this broadcast is not sponsored by anyone, let me be clear, but I really like the quality of the tejpata. And of course, it's going to be backwards in the camera, but there it is, from Burma Spice Company. Their spices are generally really high quality. And I've had this particular giant tub of them for three years now. Yeah, 3 years now, maybe 4 almost, and they've still maintained their freshness really well. So Burma Spice Company, pretty good quality, very high quality spices. Again, sadly, they are not sponsoring me. I'm not getting sponsored. There's no sponsorship for this video. So any recommendations are completely uninterested. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually put some ghee in our pan. And I like to buy my ghee in large quantities. For those who have access to it, from Costco. This is grass-fed ghee. And ghee is clarified butter, which means it's been gently heated at a very low temperature. And then the milk solids have been taken out, and all you have left is basically the butter oil, the butter fat. So we're just going to take a whole bunch of this ghee. That's right. That's how I measure in my kitchen. We're going to take a bunch of this, and we're just going to put it in the pan. And I'm going to go ahead and add my spices now. Actually, I need some more spices. I need to add some cloves. Whole cloves. I'm going to add a whole bunch of whole cloves here, like about making a pretty, oh, here, what did I just do? I'll fix that later. Making a pretty large batch here. So, you know, a bit, and actually I need some more cinnamon sticks. And let me talk briefly about these cinnamon sticks, guys. So there are two kinds of cinnamon in the world. There is what is called true cinnamon, and then there is what is called Saigon cinnamon or Vietnamese cinnamon, sometimes Chinese cinnamon. Chinese cinnamon is not true cinnamon. And if you've ever heard about all of the great health properties that cinnamon has, those health properties are in true cinnamon, also known as Ceylon cinnamon. This is Ceylon cinnamon. Notice all these little millefeuille, these little tiny, beautiful layers, right? That is in sharp contrast to cassia is its actual name, or Saigon cinnamon, also Vietnamese cinnamon, Chinese cinnamon. Notice no fine layers, one big thick, excuse me, I just inhaled something. One big thick roll. Notice all these fine little layers. Now, both of these are the bark of their respective tree. This is the bark of the cinnamon tree, the Cinnamomum verum tree, Ceylon cinnamon, and this is the cassia tree. And cassia actually has a more potent smell, cinnamon smell, than the Ceylon cinnamon has. So this one, though, is the one that has the blood sugar reducing or blood sugar controlling properties, all of those wonderful health properties, the micronutrients, bioflavonoids, anti-inflammatory. That's all here in this. This cinnamon doesn't have any such properties. Cassia has no such properties. And in fact, if you eat too much of it, it will store in your fat tissues and it's not good for you. So always go for Ceylon cinnamon, not Saigon cinnamon. And I've actually been to what used to be called Ceylon in the Middle Ages, Sri Lanka. And I've actually had cinnamon, proper cinnamon, cut straight off of the tree with a knife. And it was the most amazing experience I've ever had with regard to spices. It was, yeah, the freshness of the cinnamon flavor was really without equal. So I'm now basically just sort of sweating my whole spices in the ghee as it melts. And the whole purpose here is that these spices have different flavor properties, and the flavor properties in the whole spices, some of them are water soluble, some of them are fat soluble. So first thing we're going to do is attack the fat soluble ones by sweating them into the ghee so that they'll infuse the ghee with their flavor, and then that flavor will be evenly distributed throughout the entire korma. And we're basically going to do this until we either see some light browning in our tejpata, in our Indian bay leaves, or until we can actually smell it. Now, some people don't have enough of a sense of smell to actually smell it, so that's why I try to keep a visual eye on the spices as well. And we want to do this over a low temperature. We're not looking to burn our spices. There is little less appealing than the acridity of burnt spices. Let's see. I'm going to put my ghee back since it's pretty much done. This is Carrington Farms ghee. For those who have access to a Costco in the United States, you can buy this in these wonderful large tubs there. It's the best price and the best quality ghee you're going to get for that price. Now, it's in a plastic container instead of a jar, but if you go through the quantities of ghee that I do, then this is the winner. And I do wish they would sell it in a glass jar. I would actually pay slightly more for a glass jar, but that's not a thing. That thing that's making noise needs to go away. Okay. And if you have any questions, I am keeping an eye on the comments, so please do let me know as you have questions. Okay, so there we've got, my ghee is actually starting to smoke a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and add my pepper now. Just going to let the peppers, cook the peppers for a couple of minutes. ahead of adding our korma paste. I'm sorry if I moved away and you couldn't hear me. And actually what I'm going to be doing with the remaining vegetables is I'm actually going to blanch these and keep them separate because I'm making a massive quantity of korma gravy, but I don't want to have all the vegetables in there at once because honestly, reheating korma, the vegetables get a little more soggy than I like them to be. So I'm going to blanch my vegetables in a separate pot of water just to soften them a little bit. And then I'm going to, once the korma itself, the gravy is done, I will be adding the vegetables into just a part of the finished gravy. And then I'm going to reserve a whole bunch of the finished gravy and I'm going to freeze it so that I have that available for any night when I just want Indian curry and I don't have 6 hours. Because depending on where you start with your korma, it can take from the very beginning to the very end. It can be a long process from chopping the onions and preparing the garlic and ginger and all of that. Okay, so I'm now going to go ahead and add my korma paste to the pan. Maybe not quite that energetically, but there it is. I'm going to give this a stir. Let's see, we'll calm down a little bit here. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my spices. So this is a blend of various kinds of spices. We have my own homemade garam masala, which I make from 15 different whole spices. There's coriander, there's turmeric in there. There's a little bit of Aleppo pepper, which I really like the flavor profile of Aleppo pepper. A little bit of heat, a lot of flavor, a little bit of paprika. And we're just going to mix that all in. Also going to go ahead and add my garlic and ginger mix now. And that's a paste that I make from pressing garlic and grating ginger, 1-to-1 ratio by weight. So 30 grams of ginger, 30 grams of garlic. And what I like to do actually is I buy ginger and garlic in bulk and then I grind it up and then I mix it in a 1-to-1 ratio. And I just keep that in my fridge for when I want to make Indian curry. Okay, let me see if I can move this a little bit closer now that our chopping is done. At least I think our chopping is done. Okay, there we go. Better view of the pot now. Okay. So what I'm also going to do is I have a bunch of korma paste left in here. And I need water to cook this gravy, actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this up with water, I'm going to put it halfway, fill it with water, give it a shake, and that will help me get all of that out of the jar neatly. See, look at how that's all just now completely loosened. It will come out quite easily. Now, when you're in the process of, sort of sauteing your korma paste, you will have to scrape the bottom of your pan because the nut component, in this case, the ground cashews, will try to settle out and burn to the bottom of the pan. So will some of those powdered spices, which of course you definitely do not want. Okay, so here we go. The spices are fragrant, as it were. I can smell the garlic and the ginger, but it's no longer a raw smell. So I'm going to go ahead and add in my paste. And part of the goal of cooking this gravy is to eliminate sort of the rawness of the spices and have them meld together into this delicious gravy. And we want that water especially to draw out the remaining flavors from the whole spices. Because the flavors in the ground spices are relatively accessible. That's hence the grinding. The whole spices, those have to be drawn out now through a water process. And at the same time, the fat that is in the gravy already from the ghee and from the cashews, the cashew milk, so to say, that will also help draw out even further other flavors, different flavors. As I said, whole spices have two kinds of flavors. They have water-soluble flavor compounds and fat-soluble flavor compounds. And so ideally, we want both of those at different stages. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get some more water. And let me know in the comments below if you would ever like to see me actually make if you would like to be present for a live cooking session when I actually make the korma paste itself. I can make that happen, but I'm only going to do it if there's interest. And in case you're wondering, this is exactly the sort of stuff we cover in my Creative Contessa Sip and Cook classes. I really enjoy discussing the history and the culture and the food science of a dish and sharing that with people so that it helps them make their dishes better each time. So I think if you understand the process behind the dish, then your dish just turns out better. I mean, I am also an intuitive cook, but even my intuition is served well by understanding the fundamental chemical processes that are happening in the thermal acceleration process, which is another way of saying cooking, applying heat to a substance and watching it go. Okay, a little bit more water. I want this to cook for a little bit, so we're going to start with it thinner than not. And honestly, if I planned this a little bit better, just sort of jumped into the live streaming part. But if I planned this a little bit better, I would have blanched the vegetables, and then I would have reserved the blanching liquid for adding water to my korma paste. Yeah. Note to self for next time, plan a little bit better. But like I said, this whole session was pretty impromptu. Okay, now I always like to take a rubber scraper and scrape down the sides of my pans and pots, because otherwise that's flavor that's up there that's going to possibly even burn, which is definitely not what we want. So I like to just keep scraping as we go along. Okay, that's looking pretty. Next, blanching for water for my veggies. And actually, I do have some more veggies to cut. I just realized. Maybe if I move this over to here, this might have been the better plan. Still figuring this whole live streaming from the kitchen thing, everybody. It's a work in progress. This was definitely a test run. Okay, so a lot of vegetables have been added to Asia, to the old world since the Columbian exchange. And what that means is that things that are now standard components of a lot of dishes in Europe and Asia didn't used to be. Peppers, tomatoes, corn, green beans, potatoes, all of these very crucial items, that feature so prominently in so many dishes across Asia and Europe and even Africa. They weren't there before 1492. They weren't there in many cases before 1700. And the pepper, which is now so prevalent in Indian cuisine, in Southeast Asian cuisine, in North Asian cuisine, and Central Asian cuisine, peppers weren't there at all in many of those places until 1700 or later. It goes for Korea too. For all my Korean peeps out there, your beloved gochu is not from Korea. It's from Mexico, and it hasn't been part of your cuisine for very long. So I try to imagine these dishes without any form of capsaicin, for instance. So black pepper is not the same, just so you know. Black pepper is a completely different beast from chili peppers. Let me say pipera is not the same as capsicum. Pipera is an old world spice, an old world berry, actually, black pepper. That has been around for thousands of years. But there are other kinds of pepper that haven't been around for that long. So yeah, the way that tomatoes are a crucial ingredient in so many dishes on the Italian peninsula, for instance, didn't used to be. Used to be not there at all. In fact, for a long time, Europeans had this mistaken belief that tomatoes were poisonous because they're actually from the nightshade family. I think at some point they tried eating the green part of the plant, which is not good for you. Not good for your constitution. And then, of course, the resulting toxicity from that led people to believe that the whole thing was bad, which it's not. The fruit is just fine. Although, for some people, many people I know actually, tomatoes cause inflammation, so they can't eat anything with even tomato paste in it. Otherwise, they end up with a very unpleasant stomach ache. So, it's funny, one of the reasons, actually the main reason that I taught myself, I sought out the techniques of making authentic traditional Indian curries is because I moved to Korea, and the Indian restaurants here are so expensive. I mean, prohibitively expensive. To eat Indian curry here in Korea and to not walk away hungry, it's usually easily 60,000, 70,000 won a person to leave the restaurant and not be hungry. And I can't, that's too much. And also the places that we tried here in the first 2 years we were here, they weren't very good. They had really modified their dishes to a Korean palate, which means they were just way too spicy. And yes, I know in southern India, especially, spice is heavy, but not all Indian curries are spicy on all of India, and I honestly prefer them to be less spicy. I prefer my curry to have the dimension of spice without the pain of spice. And yeah, obviously that's subjective, but. Okay, big pot with boiling water, or with water that will be boiling. What's up? I'll go ahead and give this a stir. Remember, even if your korma gravy seems relatively diluted, you still want to scrape along the bottom of the pan so that the nut layers don't separate out and burn. Toasted is great. Burnt will ruin the whole sauce. It hurt me. Okay. Heat is on. Welcome to the live stream if you're just joining. This is a testing sort of thing. We're experimenting with cooking live streams. Today I'm making Indian veggie korma. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comment box. Maybe. Sorry, trying to figure out the angles here. It's a little tricky. Okay, lid for this. Remember, if you're boiling water, put a lid on it and it will boil faster because the heat will not dissipate as quickly. I know that this pot has an actual proper lid for it. The question is, there we go. Good enough. We're still trying to figure out the space in our Korean apartment. It's challenging. I will openly admit that spatial organization is absolutely not my strong suit. It mentally exhausts me to try to figure out where things should go. I will happily pay another person to unpack my crap every time we move and organize it and come up with an organization system. Now, once we have a system, no problem organizing it. It's just creating a system of organization in a space that is different every time with different kinds of storage every time. It gives me hives, honestly. And with the Creative Contessa crafting equipment and sewing equipment and cooking equipment, and then our hobbies or living history supplies and clothing and our cruise clothes and our dance clothes and our other purpose-made clothing, it just, after a while, we have a lot of things, not because we're hoarders, but because our hobbies are stuff intensive. Oh, and then of course there's our research library, our reference library, which is also sizable. Okay, let's see. I do like to clean as I cook along. So I'm just going to go take care of some of these dishes. Anything that seems extraneous. So back to the stove. For those who are stove watchers. And let's give our dish a stir. Now, here's a trick that works really well with a gas burner. If your dish has started to build up a lot of heat on the bottom, any saucy dish, and you need to stir it, turn the heat off before you start stirring, because this will prevent big pockets of air from rising up, exploding, and sending scalding, probably fat-laden material all over your skin. So I like to turn the heat off to do the stir if I can feel that there's a lot of heat energy built up in the dish. Then it also allows me to scrape the bottom successfully. And by turning the heat off, it actually will allow whatever may have adhered to the bottom, it will allow it to release, because the heat basically acts like a glue with the proteins in your foods. So if you turn the heat off, then it becomes easier to scrape it off of the bottom. So by turning the heat off, you prevent yourself from getting burned, and you allow yourself to easily scrape the material off of the bottom of your pan and stir everything nice and evenly. Okay, having successfully stirred, put it back on. And over here, I'm just going to check on water. It's still deciding whether it wants to actually reach temperature. Oh, a note on storing oils and fats. Oils and fats do not like heat. They don't like high heat, and some oils don't like even medium heat. Any oils or fats that are high in polyunsaturated fat, keep those away from heat. Don't store them above your stove, right? Don't store them in places to which heat rises. Ghee is very shelf stable, so it's okay up there. You know, this, I can tell this cabinet doesn't get too hot. I keep things like tallow and lard up here, but on the second and third shelves up. But for my olive oil and sunflower oil and my rice bran oil, sesame oil, I keep those well away from the stove, off to the side. And honestly, if you have a cold, like a storage room that's colder, your oils will do even better there. They don't necessarily need to be refrigerated, but yeah, heat does not do them well. And unfortunately, some oils may be rancid in terms of the fats having gone off and being inflammatory to your system, but might not actually taste rancid. So polyunsaturated fats, this is a very dangerous thing about all oils made from seeds. Seed oils tend to be very high in polyunsaturated fat, which is unstable when exposed to heat and oxygen. And so it will oxidize and it will turn rancid. And sometimes you can't even taste it. But then when you eat it, that rancid oil will cause an inflammatory reaction. And that's when you start getting pain in your joints and you start getting digestive issues. So I prefer to cook with saturated fats or monounsaturated fats like olive oil, which is much more heat stable than polyunsaturated fats are. The unsaturated part is what makes it heat unstable, because that leaves, there's openings in the chains for the fatty acid chains for things to mutate, and the resulting mutation is not good. So for those just joining us, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. We're now up to the part where we are just sort of simmering our diluted korma gravy with all the whole spices and also the ground spices. And then eventually here shortly, we're going to blanch our vegetables, and then we will continue the process. Water's almost reached blanching temperature. For those just joining us, let me know in the comments if you have any questions. For those watching the recording, I apologize if this statement gets old. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions in the chat window, rather. And if you're watching this in retrospect, drop any questions you have in the comments below, of course. Just giving this a stir. We're actually, once my vegetables are blanched, we're pretty much at the point here with this gravy where I can go ahead and add my last set of ingredients, which in this case is going to be fenugreek leaves. Those have been put someplace creative, God knows. Buried, of course, in the back. Okay. Fenugreek leaves. For those who don't know, fenugreek is kind of like the parsley of Indian cuisine. It has a much more complex flavor than parsley, mind you. At least the aromatics are more complex, but it's basically used in the same way. It tends to be added at the end of cooking, towards the end of cooking. And it's often used dry. It can be very hard to find fresh fenugreek in the United States, depending on where you are, and it's impossible to find here in Korea. If you're in Korea and you know where I can get fresh fenugreek leaves, meti leaves, let me know in the comments or in the chat window. Okay, veggies are going. So we're going to go ahead and add our veggies here. And blanching will take no time at all. And I'm going to try to do these separately. So I'm going to, no, I'm not. I don't feel like doing that. I'm going to add the carrots first because they're going to be the hardest thing. And I should have set this up better, more cleverly on my board. But like I said, I wasn't really thinking about this in terms of live stream when I started the process. I just wanted to sort of do a test run, see if there would actually be any engagement or interest in a live stream. There doesn't really seem to be at this point. Not many people have stuck around for very long, and that's fine. It's a test trying to see what sort of live content people are interested in seeing. Okay, so carrots will go in first. They will take the longest. They are the hardest here. And then I'm going to go in with the peppers and then the mushrooms very last. And we don't want these to cook very long at all. That's not the point. The point is just for them to quickly blanch and then move onward. So in with our peppers. What I don't want, I don't want mushy vegetables, and I don't want the water to get all of the vitamins. In fact, I might end up reducing the water at the end just to drink it and then not lose all the vitamins that are going to come out. Because the problem with boiling anything is that the hot water draws out the micronutrients, so vitamins A and C, that sort of B, all your vitamin B complex. That all ends up in your water. So if you ever cook clean vegetables in water, save the water and drink it. It'll be very good for you. Of course, if you're using the water to decontaminate your vegetables, then don't drink the water, dump the water. The other thing to note is that vegetables will keep cooking after you remove them from boiling water. Most foodstuffs will keep cooking with residual heat from the time you remove the heat source from them. So keep that in mind. If you like your items cooked to a specific point, and you're picky about that, then remove it just before that point. Okay, go ahead and add my meti. I like to grind, if it's dry, I like to grind it up between my hands like so. So that it becomes much finer, better distribution throughout the dish. Gosh, such a good smell. I do sometimes wish I had a way of doing 4-dimensional a four-dimensional sensory experience for you, dear viewer. Unfortunately, I do not. Nice. Just going to take a taste. Now, having tasted it, I can tell that it's going to need salt. Quite a bit. And I do like my korma to be a little bit sweet. So I'm going to go ahead and add some coconut sugar to this. I prefer coconut sugar because it is a more nutritious form of sugar. It's basically coconut nectar, the blossom of the coconut, the nectar from that's been dried. And it's unrefined, so that means it has lots of micronutrients in it. Like this actually has reportable levels of micronutrients. Per teaspoon, there is 32 milligrams of calcium, 0.3 milligrams of iron, and 79 milligrams of potassium. So that's actually pretty remarkable for a sweetener, that there's actually nutritional value to it. So that's another reason I like to use coconut sugar when I sweeten things. Is that it isn't empty calories, it's actually valuable calories. Whereas refined sugars got nothing. And it will do nasty things to your body. Okay, so my vegetables have blanched. I'm going to go ahead and drain them. I'm going to try to drain that veggie water into a bowl and not scald myself in the process. We'll see how this goes. If you hear me scream, you'll know what's happened. Okay, big bowl. And just continue to watch this not simmer while I go and do this possibly dangerous process. Onward. Okay. No screaming from the peanut gallery, so yay. I guess if I'm the peanut gallery, I am my own peanut gallery. Okay, and then I'm also going to put some peas in here, and these peas are basically already cooked. At least they're cooked to my taste. Some people like their peas to be cooked until they're like starchy mush. I really just like my peas to be kind of minimally cooked. So I'm just going to put those in here with the cooked vegetables and let the heat from the cooked vegetables take care of the thawing process. I didn't actually take them out and thaw them. Okay. Good. And something that is definitely a New World addition to Korma, I'm going to add some green beans. Green beans are from Central America, for those who don't know. They are absolutely not an Old World plant, but it's kind of what the vegetables I have right now in my kitchen, and I do like green beans. So we're going to add some of those too. These are what I call cheater green beans. They're princess, they're fine green beans. They're frozen, so I can do minimal work with them. And I'm actually going to go ahead and to defrost these, I'm actually going to put them in the vegetable water that is still in this bowl. Okay. Like I said, I like to clean as I go if I have the luxury of doing so. I don't always. And then this is a completely non-traditional accompaniment. We're going to make tostones as an accompaniment for our curry because one, I don't eat wheat flour. So naan is much trickier without wheat flour. Naan is also not the same in the home oven as it is in a tandoor oven. So the second you stop eating grains like I have, then traditional bread accompaniments don't really happen. But tostones, which are twice fried plantains, make a great curry accompaniment. So yes, I know that purists are poo-pooing me, but too bad. Call this a fusion option. Tropical, sort of tropical island, what is that? Caribbean island tostones meets Indian korma. Yeah, that's how we're doing it. That's how we roll here at the Creative Contessa. But honestly, people talk about the pure traditional cuisines, and you have to define it because it's not about pure and traditional. What you should say in those situations is, I'm interested in trying dishes from this decade or century or era, the way they would have been then, because there's fashion and foods change so often, and there are so many external influences that come in and completely revolutionize an entire culture, their cuisine, their clothing, that, to say traditional doesn't say anything, because tradition is as tradition does. Some traditions literally are established as such because someone did it twice. So traditional is a vague word. Specific would be from before World War I, from before the Columbian Exchange. If that's what you're looking for, that's different. And I actually have been exploring Persian and Indian dishes from before the Columbian Exchange. And, some of them are completely different, but for the most part, the only thing that's missing is the potatoes, the tomatoes, and the peppers. Everything else is basically the same. So, yeah. Tradition is as tradition does. Okay, guys. Well, I'm going to call this good on this dish. I've got some other, at least I think. I guess I can show you. So I wasn't able to get heavy cream, which is normally the thing that I add to my korma gravy at the end of cooking. But I do have half and half. So I'm going to go ahead and add half and half. I really prefer to add heavy cream, but our local stores are all out of heavy cream. So in we go with the half and half. Like I said, I do normally prefer nice cream. And then as a final garnish for this, some people like to put raisins on top as a garnish. Some people like to saute up some cashews in some ghee and toss those on top as well. I think I might actually add some paneer to this. I have some paneer in the fridge, and so I'm probably going to cut that up and fry it in ghee and then add it to this dish as well to give it that extra, then turn it into navratan korma instead of just plain veggie korma. Navratan korma being the 7 treasures korma, which, talks about the vegetables in it and the cheese and the cashews and the raisins. So I might decide to turn this into navratan korma. But that might be for a future live experience for you all. Oh, yay, a thumbs up. Thank you, viewer, for giving me a thumbs up. I was actually just saying I'm about to possibly close this out because there hasn't been very much engagement. And this was really just an experiment in seeing whether cooking with the Contessa Live could become a regular feature on my channel. Yeah. Well, yeah, for you, especially for those of you in the New World, of course, it is but early in the morning. That's unfortunately my dinner time. So, probably most of my viewers are actually in the Americas, as it were. So this time probably doesn't work for many people. Unfortunately, it's the disadvantage of me being located half a globe away from the majority of my viewership. But We're making veggie korma when it's kind of slowly turning into navratan korma, which, as I was saying, means 7 treasures korma. And one of the 7 treasures is going to be paneer, which I made actually the other day. Let me go grab it and then I'll cut it up. yeah, exactly. If you didn't wake up at 4:30, you would have missed it entirely. And that's kind of fine. This was really an experiment in the whole cooking live stream thing, where to place the camera, where to place me in my kitchen, that sort of thing. So this is my paneer that I made 2 weeks ago, actually. And we're now going to cut it up. And I'm going to fry it in butter, which I do because the frying process causes the proteins to coagulate, which makes the chunks more firm. Because this is homemade, I didn't have an industrial press to make this cheese. So it will be more likely to crumble apart if I just put it in raw into the dish. So I'm going to fry it in some ghee first and then add it to the gravy. To it, that means I must cut it into chunks. And also that means I will have to get my ghee out to do so. So yeah, as always, if anyone has any questions, please do let me know in the chat or comments or wants to share anything with me. I was just saying actually that our starch accompaniment for this, well, actually, we'll be eating it with cauliflower rice, which is also not traditional, but for this late at night, I prefer fewer carbohydrates. And I generally eschew grains. I make an exception for rice sometimes, but I never eat that much rice. Anyway, the starch accompaniment that we're going to be going for tonight is definitely not a quote unquote traditional one. And I put that word traditional because cuisine, like fashion, is constantly evolving to incorporate new influences from other places. So tradition is as tradition does. But we're going to be doing tostones to accompany, my refrigerator's not happy. We're going to be making tostones to accompany our curry. And tostones are basically twice fried plantains. So these aren't bananas, these are plantains. You chop them into chunks, fry them once, and I do it in coconut oil, smash them, and then fry them again. And that will be our starch bread-like accompaniment for our korma today. Actually, we're going to have 2 forms of korma because last night I made lamb korma. And so now I'm making veggie korma. I'm a korma fool, I'll be honest. And so we're going to have those 2 korma with cauliflower rice and tostones, and it will be scrumptious, I'm certain. So for frying up paneer, if I had a kadi, that would be great. I don't. But I do have a nonstick pan. The more nonstick, the better, because the proteins in the paneer will stick to the pan, unless you use crap tons of butter or ghee. And I will be using pretty large quantities of ghee, but even still, I don't want to have to use that much to prevent it from sticking. So a nonstick pan is always your better bet for this process. And when we put the paneer in the pan, we're going to want to make sure it's a single layer. This is what I call a spoonful, very official measurement. I can hardly imagine anything Indian without naan. Yeah, I haven't had naan in so long, I can't even remember the last time I ate it. But, there's so many more interesting bread options than naan within Indian cuisine. There's idli, which are these yummy, fun steamed rice cakes that are kind of chewy. There's a fermented rice crepe, whose name is escaping me at the moment. That's also really interesting because it's got that sour tart taste. Oh, what's it called? God, I can't believe. Oh, sorry guys, it's been a long work day for me. I've been performing a lot today, as it were. Anyway, basically fermented rice crepe that's very similar to the Ethiopian, I can't remember its name either now. Gosh darn it, teff. The teff pancakes that they make that are so yummy, crepes that they make as the basis for all of their yummy stews. Anyway, there's a lot of really interesting bread options in Indian cuisine. But all of them take a bit of time, and tostones don't take any time at all, and also don't require a special crepe pan, basically, and also don't require an oven that can reach 1,000 degrees. Because a tandoor oven, they're expensive, and also probably I couldn't get one in my apartment area. They'd probably object to me heating an oven up to 1,000 degrees in my, 19-story apartment building. Yeah, roti. There's also paratha. Depending on where you go in the U.S., especially if you go to a Southern Indian. Okay, so I should say the comment. The comment was in the U.S. It's usually naan or roti. Depending on where you go, and if you get the right rest kind of cuisine, so Southern Indian cuisine, you'll actually get some more interesting options for the bread. That's where you get a lot of the sour breads and the made of rice flour instead of wheat flour. And I have some theories about that, which I haven't actually done any research. It's not informed, but in general, there's this north-south divide that has to do with where the Mughal courts were and where the Mughal courts weren't. And the Mughal curries and breads are much more rich in both a metaphorical sense and in the literal sense. So your kormas and your paneer dishes, that's all from northern India, and those date back to the 15th and 16th century. And so wheat flour used to be the purview of the wealthy. All across Asia, no matter where you were, wheat flour was the purview of the wealthy for a long time, and especially white wheat flour, to remove half of the flour, to sift out the bran and eat only the white part, that was even more expensive. So things like naan kind of rely on the very specific properties of wheat, which you're not going to get from rice flour. So yeah, I suspect that naan is what's eaten in the U.S. commonly, or available commonly in the U.S., because the most common style of Indian restaurant in the U.S. is the Northern Indian. They serve Northern Indian food. No matter where they're from, they serve Northern Indian food because that's generally what the American palate likes. Those creamy, rich curries that don't have whole animals still in them, whole fish, whole prawns. I've got this great Indian cookbook that I found in a half-price bookstore in Washington State, The Indian Menu. And I can't find this book anywhere else. It's by a collection of 12 quote-unquote celebrated chefs from India. And it has recipes for dishes that I've never seen on any menu anywhere outside of India. And just some really interesting, lovely dishes. And, I wish I would see more of those on menus in the U.S. But thankfully, I have this cookbook, and so I've been able to experiment with a wide range of very different options for curries. My favorite of which is this dish called fish kate, which is it's a baked curry. It's great. And we've got a couple of baked curries in here, actually, where some of them you start on the stove and then you transfer. And then in the case of this fish kate, it's just all done in a baking dish. And it creates this really rich, tangy gravy because it's heavily yogurt based. I'm gonna leave a burn. I don't know why. There seems to be a lot of moisture in this batch of paneer, and I don't know why it doesn't feel like it's moist, but I know what happened. There was condensation on the bottom of the paneer container, and it's now on the bottom of the, oh well. That'll be a blister. When you cook as much as I do, you just end up with scars all over your hands and arms. little scars, colorful little red marks that never quite go away, or that only come out when you take a hot shower, and then you look like a diseased deer or something from the red and white modeling. But maybe that's just my particularly white skin that does that. My battle scars of creativity. Okay. Oh, the kate, the fish kate. It's actually a one I do as a Creative Contessa sip and cook. I think I'm not certain if I've uploaded it yet, but it's going to be going on. So the question was, I would love to see that dish, the fish kate. For those who don't know, I have the Creative Contessa website, and a lot of my events are recorded. My classes and workshops are recorded, and then I upload them to my website, and you can actually buy access to them, permanent access. And I've just recently launched an all access pass. So you pay a subscription fee of I think $200 a year, and you get access for a year to everything, all of the premium tutorial, full length classes and workshops on my website, which will soon, I think I've uploaded, I think I've added that one. If I haven't, I'll go and add it. I think fish kate is one of the ones. And it's one I also offer as a sip and cook event with some regularity because it's a super popular dish. It's great because you can make it in large quantities and then it stays good forever in your fridge. And I know this because I literally forgot about it, this leftovers that I had one time, and I found it like a month later and it was still good. It had not turned rancid. I ate it with no ill effect. Don't judge. So I think the spices and the ginger and the garlic kind of retard the microbial growth. Anyway, you can make it in large quantities and then eat it as leftovers over a period of several weeks, or freeze it and it defrosts pretty well too. Great for potluck, fish, or you can use chicken. You could also use lamb, honestly. The kate is great for a potluck because, as I said, you can make it in baking dishes in relatively large quantities, and it's a winner. It's an all-around winner for flavor. It's also, I would say, it's probably a good introduction to curry. It's actually also probably a good introduction to fish if you use a mild fish like tilapia. It's a good way to break people in gently to seafood. If you're just joining us, just let me know if you have any questions in the chat. I'm now frying up paneer to go into what is turning into navratan korma instead of just veggie korma. And basically the reason that we're frying the paneer is to cause those proteins to coagulate and to basically make it stronger. I'm building a stronger block of paneer, cube of paneer, so that when I add it to my curry and stir, it won't just fall apart and become like cheese crumbles, which honestly I think one of the most disgusting textures in a sauce is crumbles of cheese in sauce. It's just not great. Fine on salad. I don't like that texture in a gravy, but that's just me. One time when I was teaching a palak paneer sip and stew, Creative Contessa sip and stew, one of the students completely missed the part about frying the paneer, and she mixed it into her curry, and it just dissolved into little crumbles of cheese. She still liked it, so that's fine. You know, she was happy with the outcome. And that's all that matters, that you like what you make. Yeah, so the comment was, texture is always my problem with paneer, but I still try it, or I will try it from time to time. So what is the texture issue for paneer with you? I'm wondering. Is it too dense? Is it not dense enough? What's the feature that is displeasing? And one of the reasons I make my own paneer is that I can't find it easily in stores, generally wherever I am. And two, because I can't find organic paneer made from organic milk. So it's another reason I started teaching myself to make things like this, because I wanted it in a way that I couldn't get it locally. So I buy my whole milk organic and then make my own paneer. And what that means is it's not as dense as a lot of the paneer you generally find in stores, because I don't have industrial presses to make my paneer. Sometimes I actually like to marinate my paneer in a little bit of turmeric and melted ghee, or maybe a little mustard oil if I have it. Mustard oil is an oil that's used, I think, in the southeast of India, more prevalently as a cooking oil, and it adds a very interesting flavor profile to your dish. A little bit of spice, but in the sense of like ginger kind of spice, like mustard spice. Very interesting flavor. Spongy. Okay, so the comment about the issue, the potential texture issue with paneer is that he's found it to be spongy. I understand what you mean. I definitely understand what you mean, and that's true. That is what paneer definitely has, a spongy texture in general. Nope, I could understand. It's for some people it has like a firm tofu texture, and some people like that, and some people don't, and that's fine. Not everyone is going to like everything equally. For vegetarians, it's a good way to get protein in your diet. Paneer is, in curries specifically. I have seen some less than scrupulous Indian buffets in the United States advertise a dish as being paneer, and then actually have tofu in the dish. And that tofu is cheaper than paneer is. So it was a ploy for them to save money. If it's going to be tofu, just advertise it as tofu. Don't lie about it. I feel like that's my opinion on that matter. And just to be clear, I've encountered unscrupulous restaurant practices across the range of cuisines in the United States. But if anyone is in the Seattle area, I have a recommendation for an all-you-can-eat Indian buffet where almost uniquely people from Pakistan and India eat. You walk into this place and you don't hear English being spoken. It's most of the programmers and software developers from Microsoft who go eat there. And there's like 30 curries. There's probably 30 curries, and then there's like 10 different chutneys, and they've got the fermented rice crepes that I mentioned, and chai masala is included in the price. And there are curries on here that, again, I've never seen anywhere else in the United States, and the price is good. It's like $15 for all you can eat, and it's an amazing experience. Now the restaurant itself, it's well worn. Like, it's always backed with humanity. It is never not busy. There's nearly always a line waiting for a booth. And it is definitely a hole in the wall, and it is definitely not a luxury experience, but it is one of the best Indian cuisine experiences I've had in the United States. It's this place in Redmond. God, I can't remember what it was. It's near one of the few surviving Barnes, one of the Barnes and Nobles that actually made it, though. Okay, so my paneer is all brown. It's a little too brown on some sides. Honestly, though, it will soften back up. If there are any sort of overly cooked sides on your paneer, it will soften back up once it stews a little bit in your korma gravy. So I'm just going to give this a taste. Mm-hmm. So I've salted it and I've sweetened it, keeping in mind that I'm going to be adding some vegetables to it. So I want it to be a little bit sweeter and a little bit saltier than it would be on its own, because the vegetables will then absorb a bunch of the salt. Okay. And I also feel like you could use a little more fenugreek. For those who are just tuning in, fenugreek is basically the parsley of Indian cuisine. It's more nuanced than parsley, I would say. The flavor profile is a little bit more potent and richer than parsley, but it's basically used like parsley. It is put in it towards the end of cooking and then also used as a garnish. And if you can get fresh fenugreek or fresh methi, good for you. Let me know in the comments where you get yours. It's almost impossible to get even the dried stuff in many places here in Korea unless you're lucky enough to live near in a city or a place that has an Indian immigrant community, which we kind of do here, but it's on the other side of the city, and it would take almost as long to get to that side of the city as it would take just to take the train to Seoul from here. because that's how bad traffic on the ground can get in this part of the world. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add in my vegetables now. And then more vegetables. Oh, I just drained away my vegetable water. That was not my intention. Oh well. And yes, I know green beans are completely a New World vegetable, but actually so are a lot of the components of many Indian curries these days. Potatoes, tomatoes, peppers, all New World, guys. I'm going to stir all this in. And for those of you who watch it from the beginning, you're going to wonder why it is I just decided to add my vegetables in. And it's because it turns out that I didn't have as much curry gravy as I thought. I thought I'd have some extra that I could reserve and use for later, but not really. This is enough for this amount of vegetables. I always get a little heavy-handed with my vegetable to curry gravy, in this case korma gravy ratio. By the way, the word korma, or the word curry, comes from the Tamil word for sauce. Curry. And so if you find a recipe that has curry spice in it, walk away. Walk away. It is not a good recipe. Curry powder was invented in the United Kingdom, as far as I can tell, most likely by people who had returned from colonial work and missed the dishes, the curries, and so they invented a combination of spices that they called curry powder. Indian cuisine is rich with spice blends, different kinds, referred to as a masala, as a spice blend. And there are different masalas. Garam masala literally means hot spice blend, and it's not that it's spicy as in capsaicin spicy. It's that it's, we actually have this medieval idea of spices being hot or not. That has nothing to do with burn. So there are different spice blends that are used in curry. And there are curry leaves, which is a different thing too. But curry, the word linguistically, it just comes from the Tamil word for sauce or gravy. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and gently fold in my, that's really good. I'm going to go ahead and gently fold in my paneer, and then I'm going to serve it up. So guys, for those of you who are watching this as a recording, don't forget to hit like. Hopefully you like it. Let me know in the comments if you would like to see more such cooking with the Contessa live streams. I know this time is probably not good for most of you. Sorry. I'm 13 to 16 hours ahead of most of you, most of my regular viewers. Anyway, let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Otherwise, have a great day, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you happen to be, guys. Stay creative. Bye.